when it comes to Brett Kavanaugh, I'm not even sure where to begin at this point because this entire process has been a complete and utter disaster. This individual obviously should not be on the Supreme Court, but nonetheless, we're still talking about him as if he's a legitimate judicial scholar when that's clearly not the case. So not only did he dodge incredibly important questions that we need to hear him answer, whether or not the president has the power to pardon himself or whether or not he'd vote to overturn Roe v. Wade, chalking these questions up to hypotheticals. We recently learned that he might have possibly committed perjury or misled the Senate at a minimum on 5 different occasions. And on Friday, the New Yorker published a bombshell story detailing an allegation of sexual misconduct against Kavanaugh by an accuser we now know to be Christine Blasey Ford, a psychology professor. And she alleges that when Brett Kavanaugh was in high school, she attended a party with him, and he attempted to rape her, basically. He held her down, tried to force himself on her, and when she tried to protest and scream, he put his hand over her mouth. And really, these allegations are very, very serious. And they're credible, too, because these are allegations that her therapist actually corroborated, saying she discussed this in sessions in 2012. And Christine contends that dealing with this has been incredibly painful, especially since, he's been in the media nonstop lately, obviously, due to confirmation hearings. And in response to these allegations, Kavanaugh said this: "I categorically and unequivocally deny this allegation. I did not do this back in high school or at any time." And his friend, who was also in the room with him at the time, claimed, "I have no recollection of that." Now, a good point that Megyn Kelly made about this, that Cenk Uygur echoed on the Young Turks, is that these are especially credible allegations because if you're just making something up, you wouldn't assert that there was another witness in the room at the time, but she's sticking by her allegations. These were corroborated by her therapist, and they're very serious. I believe her. Now, this is where the story gets a little bit more strange, because in response to these allegations, on the exact same day, 65 women wrote a letter to the Senate Judiciary Committee vouching for Kavanaugh's character. So, he was either tipped off by the New Yorker's request for a comment, or he knew that these allegations would come to light sooner or later. And additionally, his accuser gave her testimony to Dianne Feinstein back in July, since she's a ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And rather than publicizing these accusations, Dianne Feinstein just chose to sit on them, not release them to the public, which doesn't make any sense to me. She claims that the reason why she didn't make these allegations public after Christine Ford wrote her this letter is because she was trying to protect the identity of Christine Ford, who did want to remain anonymous at the time. And also, she states that she didn't want right-wingers to launch a smear campaign. But certainly, in writing this letter to Dianne Feinstein, obviously Christine Ford wanted it to be known that this happened. So the fact that Dianne Feinstein presumably chose to ignore the will of Kavanaugh's accuser and just sit on this information, I think it's completely unacceptable. Now, when it comes to Christine Ford, she's decided to speak out in spite of the pain that this would obviously cause and testify against Kavanaugh. And this is confirmed by her lawyer as well in an interview on CNN recently.
Will your client, Christine Ford, be willing to testify in public to the Judiciary Committee?
The answer is yes.
She is willing to do it. Has she been asked by any of the lawmakers to do that?
That's interesting. The answer is no.
So this is a very serious situation for Kavanaugh. Very, very serious. It puts his confirmation in jeopardy, as it should. He shouldn't be confirmed to begin with, but this certainly throws everything up in the air. And immediately when these allegations surfaced, Democrats called on a delay for the vote, which was supposed to be this Thursday. It's since been delayed. And it got so serious that even Donald Trump floated the possibility of a delay himself.
I'd like to see a complete process. I'd like everybody to be very happy. Most importantly, I want the American people to be happy, because they're getting somebody that is great. I want him to go in at the absolute highest level. And I think to do that, you have to go through this. If it takes a little delay, it'll take a little delay. It shouldn't certainly be very much.
Now, you might see Donald Trump say that and think, oh, well, is he actually being reasonable here for once? No, because when you go just a few seconds into the future in that clip, you'll see that he was being completely unreasonable and still stood by Kavanaugh.
With all of that being said, it will, I'm sure, work out very well. You're talking about an individual who is as high a quality individual as you'll ever see.
Are you meeting with him today? Have you spoken?
I have not spoken to Judge Kavanaugh.
Do you know if he's offered to withdraw from the process? Has he offered to withdraw?
Next question. What a ridiculous question that
Do you
is.
think he has a passport confirmation?
Say it.
Do you think his passport confirmation is on track?
Oh, I think he's on track, yeah. I mean, I think he's very much on track. If they delay it a little bit just to make sure everybody's happy, they want to be happy. I can tell you, the Republican senators want to be 100% happy themselves. They're doing it very, very professionally. Again, this should have been brought up a long time ago. Thank you.
What a ridiculous question. Why would you even ask me whether or not Kavanaugh has offered to withdraw his nomination when only one accuser has come forward? I mean, look at me. I had 16 women come forward, and I still went on to become president, so why would he withdraw after just one accuser coming forward? I mean, Trump is insane. I don't know how else to put it. He is simply insane, and his reality is completely different than the reality that we all live in. Now, the thing I think that frustrates me the most is that initially, when these allegations came out, Democrats called on the vote to be delayed. Now, that's not really a change from the beginning. They were calling on it to be delayed until after the midterm elections at first, because they were claiming, look, isn't it the fact that just a couple of years ago, Republicans stole a Supreme Court nominee from Obama? So maybe it's the case that we should wait and allow the American people to make their decision. So after saying that it should be delayed, they didn't move the goalpost at all. They simply said, well, now that these allegations come forward, it should definitely been delayed. And people in the media, they're just simply saying it should be delayed, and now we all got what we wanted. The vote was delayed. But the problem is the goalpost should have been moved substantially after that. The vote should have been canceled altogether. Brett Kavanaugh should not be confirmed. You throw this nominee in the garbage can and you say, Trump, sorry, but you've got to come up with someone else. Because it's not just like this should be disqualifying in and of itself, but he is constitutionally illiterate. This is an individual who thinks that the NSA should be able to spy on Americans without a warrant. So he completely disregards the Fourth Amendment. He thinks that net neutrality is unconstitutional. Basic regulations. Government is not allowed to do that. It's unconstitutional in his view. I mean, this individual is a joke, and also, he committed perjury, potentially. Why are we not looking further into that? If simply you can't even follow the law yourself, then you shouldn't be making decisions with regard to the law and the Constitution. So I don't get how this didn't automatically move the goalpost. The conversation that we should have been having after these allegations surfaced wasn't whether or not it should be delayed, because I think that's a relatively easy goal to accomplish, which maybe was why they were pushing for it, but we should have been talking about canceling this vote, canning this nomination, and Donald Trump picking someone else. Because maybe you won't persuade anyone, and persuade Donald Trump certainly, which is what matters most, to withdraw this, or for Brett Kavanaugh to withdraw this, but if you at least float that idea, you might circulate that idea in media, and pundits on CNN, MSNBC, and even Fox News might be talking about the possibility of cancellation. But since nobody really brought this up, nobody's really talking about it, which is such a missed opportunity, to say the least. This is an individual that should have never been considered to begin with, again, because he doesn't base his judicial decisions off of a driving principle or philosophy that's evident. He's a partisan hack, and he rules based on what the Republican Party wants. And the possibility of him allowing a president to pardon himself is why Donald Trump would never even question withdrawing Kavanaugh, because he wants someone who's going to say, yes, a president can pardon himself, which basically makes the president above the law. And I'm not saying that simply calling on the vote to be canceled altogether and for Brett Kavanaugh to withdraw his nomination, it should be the number one thing that everyone's talking about. I'm not saying that that would work, because there's actually precedent for this. Back in 1991, Anita Hill came forward with sexual harassment allegations against Justice Clarence Thomas. And we all know what happened, because There's justice in front of his name. He's now on the Supreme Court. So it might not have even mattered because Clarence Thomas was still confirmed in a 52-48 vote. So I'm not saying that this would be an effective strategy, but the fact that we didn't even talk about or mention the idea of forcing or putting pressure on Trump and Kavanaugh to withdraw this nomination. I mean, if you want to delay the vote on any Supreme Court justice that Donald Trump is going to put forward, nothing will delay it more than making him get back to the drawing board and go through his shortlist again and pick someone else. So, if you're a scumbag, if you're a political hack with no regard for the Constitution, it doesn't matter because canceling the vote won't even be part of the national discussion, and instead people will simply be satisfied with the fact that it was delayed. But he shouldn't fail to be confirmed due to a delay or even due to an insufficient number of votes. He shouldn't be confirmed because the vote shouldn't take place altogether, ever. He should withdraw his nomination. Donald Trump should be forced to name someone else. But I mean, since we've collectively lowered the bar in America, I wouldn't be surprised at this point if he's still confirmed with flying colors. I mean, I still think it's likely, right? Because we'll hear Christine Ford testify, we'll hear Kavanaugh testify, and Republicans still have the vote, and they'll say, it's his word against ours, meh, approve. It's such a frustrating time to be an observer of American politics because nothing ever goes the way that is beneficial to the American people. And if I'm wrong, I'll be delighted, but I have a feeling he's still going to get confirmed.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.